الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه المنتجبين. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قلنا يا نار كوني بردا والسلام على إبراهيم. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Today is or this evening is the end of the second of Muharram, 1433 Hijrah. First of all, I would like to thank all of you who have taken the time and trouble to come here and sit here and listen to us. And I also want to thank the management of this center who have organized this and taken the trouble to call you all and also have given me the opportunity to come and talk to you. Traditionally, these gatherings in Muharram are one-way communication. People come and a speaker comes and he recites and he goes away. I do not subscribe to that, and I will be here after this assembly. And if you have any questions, I would welcome them, and I would try to answer them to the best of my abilities. And you can also communicate with me afterwards via email. I do not use Facebook, but I do have an email. Today's topic for this evening is the concept of social justice in any time and any place, and how it relates to Karbala, or how Karbala relates to the concept of social justice. So I have chosen a few verses of the Quran, and I'm sure you all recite Quran frequently, and many of you may be Hufaz here. At least I've met one young man who is a Hafiz, and the moment I start reciting the verse, you would know from which particular verse, from which particular group of verses I am reading the Quran and what it relates to. But I would take time to remind you all what I am talking about. When we talk about social justice, basically we relate to three elements. Social justice can only be established in a society if the society is allowing freedom, basic human freedoms to every member of the society. Plus, the society has a system by which no one within the boundaries of that society, the geographical boundaries of that society, is starving. It is easy to say that social justice cannot come without equal distribution of wealth, but nowhere in the world in human history has it happened that any society we can look at and say, oh, this is the society in this time and this place where there was equal distribution of wealth. It cannot happen. But we strive towards that. And the best we can do is let not anyone starve at any one time. That is the norm. And the third thing is that everyone's life, honor, and property is protected. Those are the three elements which basically lead towards social justice. What Islam did, Islam connected those three elements to the concept of Tawheed. So a fourth element was introduced by Islam into the idea of social justice. And Islam actually proved that without that overriding principle that there is an Almighty God who is the sustainer, the creator, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. Without that concept, social justice cannot be established. Why is that? Because man has an element in him to be good. That has been given to him by nature, but he also has an element to go wrong. And where the two conflicting elements exist inside the human being, there will be people who would really strive to be good. And they will succeed. And there will be people who would take advantage of the group of people who are trying to be good and start going wrong and usurping other people's rights. While the other person who is trying to be good will not retaliate because he's trying to be good. This person will be emboldened. Oh, look, I am free to do such and such. And that leads to crime. And when there is crime, we need a system to catch the criminal, punish him, and put him in the right place. And that requires a system of crime and punishment. Crime and punishment cannot work if the overriding entity in the society is all powerful. We have all seen, you have read history, you have read anthropology, you have read history of religions, and you know that there is a limit to how much a state can go to stop crime and punish the criminal. And there comes a time when the most powerful people in the community become criminals. And we can point to those examples. You all know that. I do not have to name the names. If that happens, then the whole system of crime and punishment breaks down. Therefore, we require an overriding umbrella of crime and punishment, who would be the last word in crime and punishment. And no one can surpass those limits. And therefore, the concept of Tawheed becomes the overriding factor in establishing social justice. Because when we believe that Allah is supreme, and there will be a day when He will bring us to a point where He will say, tell us, what did you do? Why did you do that? Only then can we be brought to true justice. And that is why Islam says that without the concept of Tawheed, social justice cannot be brought to any society. Any society. And Quran, which is the basic book for our guidance, has stories after story to tell us what has happened when people were left to their own devices and they had everything good going for them. They had food, they had shelter, they had family, they had prosperity. And then suddenly a time comes when that group of people who have the element of crime in them take over the society and they start oppressing the larger majority. And there is a limit to how much oppression a group of people will take. And then they start revolting, and that creates conflict. And that is where a reformer rises. And he works not for himself, but for everybody else. And that's the hallmark of a reformer who starts working for social justice against oppression by a minority or a majority. But he is a selfless person, and he comes from within the community. And Quran has said that many times. For example, I have chosen some verses from this line of verses, of which the first one I recited to you when Allah points to an event in ancient history, and He says there was a time when our faithful servant was thrown in fire, and we said to fire, Qulna, we said to fire, be cold and comfort, and bring peace to Ibrahim. this is the end of a series of verses. And I would like to take you through that series of verses so that story is told from the Quran instead of in my own words. So, to give you the preamble, Ibrahim is 16 years old when this happens. From the early childhood, he grew up in a community whose hallmark was they would carve out stone idols and place them in a temple and worship them. That has given rise to a priestly class. They were in charge of the temple, and they claimed that they were closer to the gods, and the gods who were stone idols were responsible for anything that happened bad to you or anything good that happened to you. And we are their spokespersons. So they became the elite of the society. And by virtue of claiming that they are the priests in the temple, they are closer to gods, they started manipulating the people, the larger community. And that started the operation. So basically, by way of religion, they oppressed a larger community and started exploiting them in all manners, financially, in family affairs, in community affairs. And this young man who grows up in this society, he looks at this whole thing and he develops an antipathy towards this whole system. And from the early childhood, he talks to his elders in the family and says, "What are you guys doing? What are these stone idols?" "Well, yes, we have heard our fathers that these are our gods, and anything that happens good to us is caused by them. Anything that happens bad to us is caused by them, so we have to worship them. And we have to bring presents to them, gifts to them, so that they are pleased with us." And he says, "But you are carving them out of stones yourself. So you're making your own gods." And this is how his logic works. To us, it sounds so logical. How can anything you make with your own hands can become your God? It's stupidity. But those people, 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, did not look at the logic. They followed in the footsteps of their elders, and they continued doing what they were doing. When he became a little older, he started saying those things out on the streets in the community. And everybody learned that there is a boy who is against our basic religious practices. What does he want? And they realized that he wants to free the people from the clutches of this priestly class. This is the conflict that's growing. In the background, these are the verses of the Quran